In this special lesson that is pretty different from most of the lessons on my channel, I'm going to give you a very unique glimpse into the abstract link between jazz and classical music. I am going to show you what a sophisticated composition by Chopin would look like as a jazz chord chart, as if it were for, a jazz musician playing guitar or bass or piano or comping or following along, just reading down the chords from top to bottom, like a jazz musician could do for any chart, because that's one of the things they're really, really good at. But that's not how, classical music appears to us. It appears as a bunch of notes, and you can go in and figure out what the chords are if you want to, but most classical musicians are not thinking about each chord and how it relates to the key. Before I get into it here, let me just do a little rant on that divide between jazz and classical. I really feel it's kind of a fractured whole is what it is. I've had a lot of friends that had, music degrees at universities, and right when you get in the door, the first thing they do is say, are you going to do jazz or are you going to do classical? And I really think that's very telling, because what that ends up meaning, if you go down the classical, path, for most people, what that ends up meaning is you are very good at executing pre-written music in a variety of dynamics and articulations, and putting all of these different types of timbres into it in a very, very adept manner. And jazz, on the other hand, you're learning how to improvise over chords and things like that. Obviously, jazz people can execute the music as well, but a huge component is improvisation over chords, and that's just not something classical musicians are taught. And I think it's kind of a shame. I know you can't do everything, but it'd be nice if in classical music, if you're reading along and it just said the chords as it went, that would be very helpful for me. I play contrabass. I'd like to know what those chords are. Then you would actually learn as you're playing and start getting that sound into your ear. But, I could go on and on about that divide, and I think it's kind of a silly one, because I think both skills are very important. Improvising over advanced chord progressions and being able to execute music very well like classical musicians can. So my point here is to show you, what this Chopin chord chart would look like, because every one of these bars is pretty easy for me to see what chord he's playing. But, he wrote some really elevated stuff, so it's not the kind of thing you could pick out super easily by just listening to it, especially on this song, FANTAISIE Impromptu, Opus 66. You might recognize it. It's one of his most virtuosic, just really, really difficult to play, very fast, and there's a polyrhythm almost the whole time where the left hand is playing triplets and the right hand is playing 16th notes, which is very difficult to play. I could not play this, so I have a MIDI file doing it for me. But knowing the chord progression is like having the harmonic master key of a composition that unlocks every door you want it to. Whereas just being able to play the notes and add the right dynamics and articulations and tempo fluctuations is an amazing skill. I'm not putting that down in any way, shape, or form. But why not know the chords too? So I think some of you, non-classical people that can read chords will probably get a kick out of this chart. One thing classical music enjoys is a freedom from a militaristic, strict tempo like we're used to in Western music, because we've made drums such a prominent part of our music. And it's not saying drums can't speed up or slow down, but in general, when you remove those drums, and you put yourself with a conductor who's going to interpret the piece in a certain way, that the way that tempos fluctuate in classical music is just something that pop and rock will probably never be able to do. I have tried in songs to be able to, produce music with drums that does have those type of fluctuations to, varying degrees of success. But classical piano really gets away with speeding up and slowing down in these kind of breaths and gusts of wind, and then falling back and relaxing. And so you will hear a click track in this when I play it, just a really mellow, so you can hear how much of a plastic tempo a classical player will play with. This song is in a minor key, C sharp minor, and Chopin is very good at not making it a typical 1-4-5 boring minor, which I talk about a lot. And a lot of times I like to put things into major keys when I can, like the relative major, but this is so clearly in C sharp minor that I'm going to call it there. And I'm not saying that the way I analyze this is the way Chopin was thinking about it. I mean, he does have, some key signature changes, but not all the ones that I have, because sometimes I think they might just tough it out for a couple bars that's in a different key and just keep it in that same key signature and write out all the accidentals. Yeah, I'm making no claims that this is, how Frédéric was thinking of it when he was composing it, but it's just something that can kind of bridge that gap a little for all you chord change geeks out there like myself. Very quickly, before I get into it, please consider signing up for my Patreon, High Castle Conservatory. It's the very best way to support my efforts on this channel, and it really helps me keep things going here. Also, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, and check out the playlist page to find other videos that you might like in the subject matter you are most interested in. About my chord analysis chart, anytime you see a sunshine, that means a new key for the bar below it. So right here, C sharp minor. We're in C sharp minor here. Obviously, it's a new song, so I'm calling it a new key. But if you go up here, G sharp minor, it changes to G sharp minor at this key below it. So it's not the one above it, it's the one below it. Changes to E major below this E major sun. Changes to C sharp major below this C sharp sun. Then we have the Roman numerals, which tell us which function this chord has in the key that we happen to be in. So if we're in C sharp minor, G sharp 7 is the 5 dominant of C sharp minor. Going over here, we're in the key of E. F sharp minor is 2 of E. B7 is 5 dominant of E. So that's all pretty self-explanatory. Then I kind of got a kick out of naming, pop and rock section names. Intro, verse. Is there such thing as a verse in classical music? Chorus, yes, chorus. Post-chorus, verse 2, interlude. So that's pretty much it. It's all pretty self-explanatory. Mostly what we're going to be doing is just having me play a MIDI file, and we are going to just be following along to the chords. So I'm not going to do this entire song because it gets kind of repetitive at some point. So I'm going to take this up until the breakdown, and we're just going to follow along to the chords. So we got a mellow click track going, and you're going to hear how wild the click track is. I'm a terrible conductor, but it's going to be like 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is going to be the beat where I go up. But please don't make fun of my conducting. I'm not a conductor. It's beat. This song is all in 4/4. So 2, 3, 4 is the pattern I'm going to do. But I'm sure it's not the best conducting ever. But the tempo is all over the place, and it is a beautiful thing. 'Then we get to that really pretty section in the middle, which I can call the breakdown. It sounds very silly applying a pop and rock song section names to classical music, but these pieces kind of function like that. The pianist is the lead singer in this case, and it's the lead. It's instrumental music, but there's certainly an element of pop to this, especially in that breakdown middle section there. But mostly what I'm going to be focusing on is everything that we just heard there. So we followed along there to the chords. We can see we're in C sharp minor, which is relative major is going to be E major, but so it starts in that intro. I'm calling it G sharp 7. I think it's really just a G sharp note. but it's implying 5-1. G sharp 7 to C sharp minor is 5-1 in C sharp minor. So the first thing is pretty cut and dry. We have a C sharp minor, and then you see there's some modifications to the bass note, which is very common in classical music, so I won't even go into you can just look at it yourself. C sharp minor for 2 bars, basically, and then we just do a 2-5 in C sharp minor. And if you remember from some of my other lessons, a 2-5 in minor is not the same as a 2-5 in major. In minor, instead of it being a minor 7 chord, it's a minor 7 flat 5 chord. So we have C sharp minor, which is 1 in C sharp minor, to 2, which is D sharp minor 7 flat 5, to 5, which is G sharp 7. That's a pretty typical chord progression, but obviously what he's doing in the melody is so elevated, it's almost hard to detect that it's this simple progression going on under it. It's the same key and chord progression as that Beatles song. Because the world is round, it makes me same exact key and everything. But I'm calling this the verse here, and it starts off with a pretty simple 1-2-5 in C sharp minor. After that, it gets a little fancy on that second line and goes C sharp minor again, but it turns at C sharp minor 6, which is pretty strange because in C sharp minor, we usually build our chords from the harmonic minor scale. And there is no C sharp minor 6 from that because we need this note, right? So C sharp minor 6 to me almost tells us that we're in a different key, because I'm not saying you can't have, be in the key of C sharp minor. That's more of a melodic minor type of mode when you have a minor 6. But most of the time to me, it says we're in a different key. And lo and behold, if we follow, we're C sharp minor 6, then we go to G sharp minor for D sharp, then D sharp 7, then G sharp minor. We did switch keys to G sharp minor. And I said that a minor 6 chord is not available from 1 of a key, but guess what? It is available from 4 of a key. So if we're in G sharp minor, the 4 would be C sharp minor, and you could add a 6. So my suspicion there was that they had switched keys even before I read the rest of the progression there, and I was actually correct there. Wow, even a blind squirrel finds an acorn, as my dad used to say. A real uplifting phrase for many people. But yeah, so it takes that C sharp minor, turns it to a minor 6, which is 4 of G sharp minor, goes to G sharp minor over D sharp, then D sharp 7, then G sharp minor. Let's listen real quick just to that verse and follow along one more time. 1, and then 2, 5, and back to 1. Turn it to minor 6, and now it's in a new key of G sharp minor, D sharp 7, G sharp minor. Then we go to the relative major of E from that C sharp minor that we were in originally. Now I call this chorus. This part is so beautiful and mesmerizing, and that tempo change he's doing right at the beginning is just, feels like it's wrapping itself around my soul. Here's the chorus. And it picks up after the... when's the last time you had a chorus start out with a tempo like that? I haven't, and I need to incorporate that because that is amazing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So this is very catchy here, and it's a pretty simple chord progression here. So we have F sharp minor over A, which is 2 in E, then B7 or even B9. That's the whole thing. Repeat that 3 times. And then after the 3 times, you do F sharp minor over A, down to G sharp 7, which you might think we're going back to C sharp minor, but then it kind of dabbles in C sharp major for this thing called the post chorus before it goes back to C sharp minor. So that's always something you can do to play around is let's say you started in C sharp minor and then you go some other places and you're trying to get back there. Doing an interlude or a post-chorus that hints more at C sharp major, it's no problem to do that and then just suddenly go back to C sharp minor. So that chorus, F sharp minor over A, the melody is... Very catchy, and like I said, those tempo changes are mesmerizing. So that's a simple 2-5-1 and E. Who was expecting that, huh? This is really just pop music in a way, right? And then finally, so let's listen to that chorus. Repeat one more time. G sharp 7, going back to C sharp major, but not obvious. And you see where I say we're going back to C sharp major in the post chorus. It's a very abstract version. I had to call it something. Definitely wasn't C sharp minor. So let's go over those chords. We've got B7 over A. Always a great note to put the dominant 7 in the bass. Brian Wilson does that all the time. So the post chorus is B7 over A, D sharp minor over A sharp to G sharp 7 flat 9, which is pretty much like a diminished chord, right? So that's flat 7 of the key of C sharp, then we have 2 of the key of C sharp, then we have 5 of the key of C sharp, then we're back to flat 7, which is an important, even though it's not diatonic in C sharp, I have whole videos on that. Flat 7 to 2, then flat 7 again, then finally. So it was definitely not overtly major, and maybe I just kind of forced it into C sharp. But when I saw that D sharp minor, I knew for sure we were not in C sharp minor, because the 2, remember, is D sharp minor 7 flat 5 if we're in C sharp. But by the time they end up on this G sharp 7 over C, is you can always, whatever key you're in, you can go to minor. So let's say we were in C sharp major for a minute there. You can always just suddenly go back to minor or suddenly go back to major, and that's kind of what he does here. Even though our time in C sharp on that post chorus was not obviously in C sharp major, it had more of a dark kind of sound. Verse 2 does the first 4 bars the same, and then it kind of goes off on the tangent. It goes off on an interlude and doesn't do the same thing as the second half of the first verse. So let's take a listen to that chorus leading into the post-chorus. Comes the post-chorus. So there's verse 2 there. Now an interlude, which is different. 4, 1 dominant, 4, 1 dominant, 4, 1 dominant, 4, 5, sorry. Pretty crazy. The first 4 bars of verse 2 are the same. Then it goes on to this interlude, which seems like it's still part of the verse, but it's different. And we go 1 in C sharp minor, and then we go to 4 in C sharp minor, then we go to 1 dominant in C sharp, then we go to 4, then we go to 1 dominant. Let's also remember that if we were in F sharp, that's kind of like going 1-5 in F sharp, but I'm not saying that's a key change, but it kind of feels like that almost. So 1 in C sharp minor, 4, 1 dominant, 4, 1 dominant, 4, then 5, and then back to C sharp minor, which is 1, then 5, then 1, then 4, then 1, then flat 6 dominant, A7, it does a stop right there and does the crazy lick going down, then 5, then back to another iteration of flat 6, but this time it's kind of like hinting at a major 7 chord in a way. Not exactly, but the arpeggio, it kind of hints at that. Then back to 1, but it's in like an add 11. Then a G sharp. And I don't think he was thinking. I think he was just coming up with cool patterns at this thing right here. Then we've got flat 6, 1, 5, flat 6, 1, 5, flat 6, 5, flat 6, 5, 5, 1, but we resolve to C sharp major. Like I said, you can always just resolve to a major or a minor if you're in that key, like suddenly. So let's listen to that interlude, which is pretty crazy. So let's listen from verse 2. Here's what I call interlude. Resolves to C sharp major. Then it goes into this really pretty part that uses chords that we're a little more familiar with. I'm not going to get too into analyzing them. I'm just going to show it to you real quick. But it's a lot of it's in the key of D flat, or this was an old chart I wrote for this middle section, so maybe I should have called it in C sharp still, but in this key in this chart I wrote it in D flat, sorry. But this, I'm just giving you a taste, and this is much simpler. We're in D flat, it's lots of 1s and 5s, 4 minors, which have that sappy sound, some 2s, some 6 dominants, some 2 dominants, like things you expect in pop music, but in a very, very elegant way, obviously, as Chopin does. So let's listen to this breakdown. Five, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 4, 6, 6 dominant. Climb up from 2, 5, 1, 2 dominant. Yep. 5, 2 minor. 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 4, 6. 6 dominant, climb up from 2 to 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 2 dominant, 5, 4 minor, sappy, it's always sappy. Always amazing the way he uses it though. He really milks that emotion out of that 4 minor chord better than anybody. So anyway, that's all pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this chart. To me, it was a real trip going into that score. And what chord is that there? Oh, yeah, I think he's doing that. And like I said, it's not how he was thinking of it. He's probably thinking more patterns and keys, or I'm not even sure what, because the man was an absolute genius, the likes of which I will never achieve, especially in that world of classical piano. But man, I think this is a cool little exercise for musicians to, start to absorb some of those classical chord changes. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Please come and join me on my Patreon, and yeah, have a good one. Thanks a lot for watching this video and taking an interest in my channel. Please help me reach a larger audience by hitting subscribe below and ringing the notification bell. Check out my video playlist page to find the categories that most interest you. Leave me a super thanks here on YouTube, and even better, come join my Patreon. Please consider buying music for my original projects I.S.S. and High Castle Teleorchestra. Also, don't forget to sign up for my email list on the front page of timsmolens.com. You can find information about all of those things in the description below. Thanks again.